everyone, welcome back to yet another episode of Reinventing Finance. As usual, I'm not all by myself. I have my lovely co-host, Tom. Tom, how are you this fine morning?
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm doing very well. I'm looking forward to our talk to Stefano.
Awesome. So you already gave it away. We have a guest, Stefano from Zurich. Stefano, thank you so much for being with us. Welcome in our virtual abode.
Thanks to you and to Tom for this great moment to discuss together.
Awesome. Stefano, maybe for our listeners who don't know you, would you briefly introduce yourself, or, who are you and what the hell are you doing?
Yeah, so I'm Stefano De Liguoro, the head of digital business, CDO of Zurich Insurance in Spain. And it's not simple to say precisely what I'm doing, but I'm the responsible to generate new business model based on digitization, digital new features, and try with that to simplify the way the customer interact with insurance. And let me say, last but not least, try to bring new generation to the insurance world.
Okay, that's quite a handful. Must be interesting, and not without its trials and tribulations. But maybe, I find it really, maybe let's try to dissect it a little bit. If I've done my research well, your title is, amongst other things, Chief Digital Officer, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And if I understood you correctly, it is a measure of new business model generation. Okay. It is a measure of what you would traditionally could call digital transformation, but towards the customer. So it's sales and operations and potentially claims as well, with the interaction touch points. And the third one is actually a target customer segment of, is that, your TikTok generation, the 20-year-olds, rather than people who traditionally buy insurance, who are not as, is that a fair? So if we have those three things, what I always find interesting, how are you guys set up around, how centralized, how many resources do you have yourself? How much do you enable? How does that work in practice? Because chief digital officers can be, I would say, between heaven and hell and everything in between.
Yeah, so thanks for the question. I mean, it's the reality, no? When you speak a big corporation like our, when you speak about digital, probably, say 99% of the process are, or we have the intention to be digital. So I'm not in in charge of digitalize everything in the company, but I'm much more focused on, as I say, new business model, new opportunity to generate new income, but also new proposition that could attract new type of customer. No, so for sure this is not just sales, because the proposition is much broader than that. It generate a proposition in insurance, means generate a new product, or using the existing product like motor, household, but reinventing, them based on digital features that allow us to simplify the process from a customer perspective, to target and personalize much more the proposition to them, but also, as you correctly say before, so generate new operating model and new claims model that simplify, the interaction between the customer and the company. Like, for example, using artificial intelligence or chatbots, for example, or other ways that allow that the customer is not an expert of insurance, could interact with the company in an easy way based on the real events that occur to him or to her and in these policies.
Understood. And I think so from my point of view, and I think it's very good to understand that, if proposition design, right? You cannot just make the sale, because if you then cannot operate the product, you cannot provide the proposition in the first place, etc., etc. One way for me to try to kind of ring fence these things is potentially, we've seen some chief digital officers to be in charge of alternative channels. for example. So you have your tied agents, broker, bank assurance, your kind of traditional channels, and then that in a chief digital officer who's working more on the towards the market would be and has a revenue target or a customer target, amongst other things, would then have some channels, alternative channels or embedded insurance, whatever you affinity, sometimes direct. Could you elaborate a little bit how that works, on the channel mix and where you might support, if they wanted to, exist, traditional or, whichever channels, and where you are the channel owner, and have a little bit more, decision-making responsibility.
Okay, yes. So, when we generate, as I say, new proposition for new targets, for sure you have own responsibility on it, so own P&L related with this type of customer, with this type of proposition that have, as you correctly said, as, let me say, essentially the specific channel where you are responsible to. So on these ones are embedded insurance, new type of partnerships. So partnership and indirect are my, let me say, own channel. Okay. But we every day more we see the customers interact and want to have digital interaction and digital proposition along all the type of channels that we have in the company. So as you said, I'm owning, let me say, those channels that are probably 100% digital, like new partnership, embedded insurance, direct, but I'm very well connected with the, let me say, the traditional part of the insurance, that is agent, brokers, banks, distribution, where I'm supporting, let me say, this channel and these responsibilities with our proposition and our support to digitalize also the interaction with this channel, because the customer want also in that areas in this channel the same experience, so the same propositions.
Do you have some examples of, and maybe also some things which, despite all the judgment and effort, did not work out? That we don't always, things don't always work out, but I think that would be helpful to kind of get that a little bit more.
So to give some examples, when we speak about new partnership of embedded insurance, I use always the same example. No, one main large part, and there the digital business is by default. No, when a customer purchase a device through Orange, we embed the insurance immediately in the moment that the device is purchased. This 100% embedded insurance, 100% digital, not just in the moment of purchase, but also in the administration on the claim experience, for example. Okay, this owned by us is 100% digital, 100% embedded. When we speak in terms of interact, for example, and support all the other channels, we have launched recently a health product that is digital first. So the customer in this health product interact with a real doctor, but digitally through a chat, through a video call, and could have not just the diagnostic, but also prescribed medicines, for example, all digitally. And then if you need, for example, a physical visit, this doctor, this real doctor, digitally generate the appointment, the meeting for a proper specialist physically, and this is something that we are doing not just for the digital channel or for the digital native people, but is a proposition that we sell and promote across all our channels, also through agents, brokers, and all the others. And just to complete, you say, but there are things that sometimes does not work, or some proposition that are not working in all the channels. This is true. For example, device insurance that we are doing very well with Orange, for example, or with any retail that we are working with, could not be sold easily through an agent channel. Why? Essentially not because in that case there is not need on a digital proposition, but because the agent does not work or is in the right moment when a customer purchase a device. And therefore the conversion is not so relevant like when we are connecting an embedded insurance like Orange. So it's not so relevant. For sure, they can sell, and there are agents that are selling this device insurance, for example, but it's something that is not like the health product that I mentioned before, because they are not in the right moment when the customer purchase this device, you know.
Understood. And so in my words, you have you have the embedded partnership channel where you act holistically. You design the products, you operate the products, you do the claims, but sometimes you also create, kind of omni-channel services and product propositions, like the digital, like telemedicine, digital health, by yourself or in partnership, doesn't really matter, that then can work across other channels. I think what you don't probably do are in charge of digitalizing the 360 advice program for your tied agents, or the interconnectivity between yourself and the leading broker management systems in your market. That's probably where internal digital transformation would kind of play. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So as I said, we are speaking about millions of different operations and activities in a company like us, that we are going from commercial insurance to personal lines, SME, mid-market. Therefore, I'm not in charge of all of them and not all of the processes, but we are really cooperating between all of us, learning all the learning that we have done in the digital space are well absorbed, let me say, from all the other teams, and we have a dedicated transformation team in each one of the segments, for example, and therefore they are in their transformation goals. There is also the digitization of the segment.
You've also mentioned that you're in charge of kind of attracting younger customer segments. What are your thesis around this? Do you have some thesis to share on how do you define that customer segment? Where do you think you can reach that customer segment? What's your expectation also of building that up, being conscious that a 19-year-old has different insurance needs than a 35-year-old or a 55-year-old?
Yeah. No, this is a great question, because Zurich Klinc, that I'm owning, it was born essentially for this reason. So the average age of an insurance customer right now is above 50 years old for all the companies, and we discussed how we could attract a 20 years old customer to our to Zurich, but in general to the industry, no. And essentially we started for the reason we started with device insurance in Zurich Klinc, because we asked it to all these 20 to 30 years old customers. And if you imagine how is the world, growing or changing, you could imagine that at 20 years old, for example, you don't have a house. Maybe you rent a house together with other people, but normally you are still living with your family. Or in motor, less than 30 years old, probably less than 50% have a car. Therefore, these two products that are the most, let me say, convenience one in our industry are not targeted for the 20 years old customers. Mm-hmm. And also, if you see the new trends, the people are renting much more the motor product, and therefore you generate, you have another barrier in that sense. Therefore, we started asking them what is the most relevant thing for them is, and this one is their mobile. It's their life, where they have all the social media, where they interact with all the people, where they have all their life, no? And but the second topic is the fact that they would like really a very well experience, and this is probably what changed the insurance, like all the other channels, like all the other industries, is the experience that you have to bring to them. So one of the learning that we understood is not just the products that we generate. We generate products like device or micro mobility for e-scooter, bicycles, and other way of transportation, but the fact that they want really an experience from the moment of purchase up to the cancellation of the policy, where they should be very free of changing everything every day based on the type of life, the lifestyles. For example, we introduced the on-demand concept in insurance, that the customer can switch on and switch off the insurance every 5 minutes if they want, because they really want to include the insurance, not like what was in the past, a static product annual with a renewable every year with the same condition, but to change based on their needs. For example, in household, that is probably the most relevant example, we have introduced a product that you can start with like a renters. Therefore, we guarantees just for renter insurance, like general liability or the content. But then you can add, for example, other covers along the life of the policy. So we break, let me say, the concept of having just one moment to purchase and then renew the policy 1 year later, to a constant modification of the policies based on the lifestyle of the customer. And this is an experience, and this should be in the mobile. This is the most important advice. This should be in the mobile of the customer. If this should be done through a contact center or in a PC where the customer has to log documents and so on, this does not work. This should be done with one click from a customer every moment that they need, in any place where they are.
Is this then one single contract where you
It's
just add?
Because it's not also a single contract. Is, you know, that the insurance is based on a thing that should be insured. So it's based on the object that you want to insure. But then we can generate packages of bundled products between them. Therefore, we are covering, for example, different devices altogether, all the stuff that the customer could have, a laptop, a PC, a mobile, let me say, a scooter, all together could be bundled in a single product, and the customer can play with them based on their needs.
Okay, but it's one policy, so to say.
Is one policy when we can do that based on the objects. If it is a motor product, could not be bundled in a single policy with a household. This is still not possible by legislation.
Okay.
Yeah, but it and I understand. And then you, I mean, ideally, even if you had a virtual policy, etc., there's just certain, you need to break it down regulatorily by the lines of business in some point, and there is a optimal grade of additional efficiency to really investing on the back end of how regulatory and traditional processes work. What I find really interesting when you said, so I fully get the concept of, you know, it's very, I think, starting with device protection, then adding certain things around it based on what people have, and, you know, not owning a lot, but renting a lot changes your ownership structure. What I found really interesting, and making these changes, like, you know, I'll chase my phone, etc. I'll add something. What I found really interesting when you said we have a true on-demand concept, 5 minutes off, you know, on my experience, and I'd be very happy to be proven wrong. My experience from watching the market players like Trough, who had that very proposition, and even after 100 million, just didn't make it work, I believe, in the UK and in Australia. And in the US. And I think one of the reasons was that people don't want to interact that often with it. You know, what you want is, at least that was have you had different discussions, you know, experience that people do switch that, you know, do people go, ooh, I'm now going out partying, so I'll increase my theft protection, and then when I'm out of the club, I'll remove it again. Which was kind of discussed a lot in the 2015, 2016s, and it just wasn't experienced. Or is it more, when I change a house, I'll change my phone, I want to kind of change it and not have to kind of have two contracts and, you know, have to pay on a contract on a device that I don't protect. Would just be interesting on that particular point, out of personal curiosity.
Oh, yes. I mean, the answer is very clear, because we have investigated this quite often. And what they like a lot, what the customer like a lot, is the flexibility. So having the freedom, actually the on-demand product, for example, costs more than the annual product itself, okay? Because the exposure, the for us is higher. In that case, therefore, it's a bit more expensive. And I tell you that there is a part of the book, not all of them, part of the book, they really want this product because they want to have the flexibility. This does not mean that they use it, okay? Actually, they use quite few of them comparing with those ones that have purchased it. But they are willing to pay 20% more, for example, that is the cost of the on-demand compared with the annual one, to having this opportunity. Probably they are not doing this for a mobile because they know that they use the mobile every day. But for a laptop, for example, they want to have it because they know that when they park it at home, they want to switch on, switch off. For sure, this is something that they are not using a lot. But let me say that in other line of business like motor is where if you could do that based on sensor and automatic, let me say, on-demand concept like the UBI, is something that you have seen already in some market. This works quite very well because it is not requested that the customer interact, but is the digitization of the model that allow to interact directly and automatically switch on, switch off the product.
Oh, absolutely, and I think it's really interesting, and I cannot make this point enough that when you talk to actuaries and product designers, there is a certain level of hubris about, and people would say, you don't need device insurance. That's not what insurance is for. Insurance is for XYZ. You don't need travel insurance. You have these kind of opinions. And then I go, sure, a collision damage waiver has a different risk protection element than a life insurance on a house. I get that, but it's ultimately about the customers to decide what they want. And the certain level of flexibility might work quite well for people who probably also, I would also not buy a Starbucks coffee for €5 every day. I'll have my French press at home, but there's different, there's different types of people. And what you've just said, I think what could be a very interesting on-demand proposition, and we've actually found that work quite a lot in Germany, is having someone else drive your car. So not renting it out, but having another designated driver on your policy. Because if not everyone has a car, half of them, they might know someone who has, and to go to the IKEA, but then you really don't want to have that discussion with them if they then scratch your car. That really sucks. And so that's actually where on demand, or where you in Germany, you have a lot of people going on holiday by car or something. So you have certain situations where this can help. And maybe it's just a way to attract customers more cheaply, because you have different keywords, you have different conversion, and whether they then actually use all of the flexibility. But some people just like that. I think that's a very good point.
But just to add on what Nick is saying, let's say this car example really makes sense. But I was just curious about this switching on and switching off. How many clients or customers in the end really use this option? Because I always have the impression that there is this kind of idea you could use it, but in the end you don't use it. Like living in a big city, and then you're telling everybody that you live in a big city because you can go to the opera or to concerts. And then if you ask people how often do you go to the theater, then everybody says, oh, that's 2 years ago. So how many people really use those options?
As I say, not too much. So
not too much.
The important thing is to have the flexibility. It's like
that's
when
the idea.
Is in my opinion the better example is when you buy a ticket for an airplane, that there is the flexible option or the static option.
Okay.
And if you ask them to Iberia or to American Airlines how many have really then changed the ticket, probably there are not so many, but they want to buy the flexibility because they think that in the right moment, so what they are paying more makes sense for having the flexibility,
And I've always had this argument, and I think it also depends on the channel. So if you are buying your insurance through an advisor, it's a different situation. You probably are being prompted to buy insurance. You then sit down. It's less of a spontaneous purchase. If you're self-serving, just the level of okay, if I now make this decision, but I can change it later, will easier tip you over the line. We've had something similar in Germany when some insurtech started introducing, you can cancel your policy any day. No one did it. People were really afraid about it, but it just tipped them over because people still didn't interact. But at that moment because I think what people in our industry, sometimes we talk about simple products and complex product, but insurance is usually quite a complex process for anyone not engaged in the industry. And when making a decision where you don't really understand what's going on and you don't really want to read the fine print, then having the option of later changing it is a very good option to have.
And just to build on top of what you are saying, so what I mentioned before, that in my opinion is the main learning of the digital insurance business, is that we have to really break the concept of one single moment for contract, one single moment for renew. So the customer wants an experience. So the contracting moment, the quote and buy process that we say should be constant. Every day they can contract or remove part of the policy. And in some countries we have included this, like they can also cancel the policy every day, as you said. And actually, this is a market standard in France, for example, but it does not mean that the customer is canceling every day the policy and contract again. The important thing is that we allow them to change the policies based on their needs. We adding new add-ons, new guarantees, or removing part of them because they will not use anymore.
If kind of and thank you very much for being so transparent there. I think that's really helpful. Now, if you were to provide some unsolicited advice to others on how not to, or how to set up a sensible CDO, Chief Digital Officer structure, what would be some of your, to someone's CEO, how they would, design this? Would there be any advice you could give, or potentially put it in a different, should you ever, and we know that this will never happen, go to a different carrier with a similar proposition, only under which conditions would you pick up the job title of CDO again? How would that have to be worked out?
So I would be quite bold on this. Okay, so we started this because our objectives was to grow in our distribution. Okay, and we identified that there were an opportunity 5 or 6 years ago, that there were new business models that were not still, let me say, leveraged properly by the industry, like the embedded insurance, like the new type of partnership, for example, like direct with based on digital futures. The direct model based on telephone was already really mature, but the digital service mode of the customer based on specific marketing outbound campaigns, for example, and so on, was completely with personalization, was completely new, no? So for me, the main advice to a CEO should be, you should have very clear which is the objective of it. Okay, if it is to transform, is not needed, in my opinion, a CDO. A digital transformation is something that is a trend, is something that is a must for each functions and for each part of the company. And this could not be centralized to just one person, to just one team. This role, because we have a target of business, we have a target of customer, and therefore we have like a new segment that we want to generate a proper P&L with a specific team. And this is the second advice that I can give to somebody, that we have made this because we have generated a specific team dedicated to this, with their own responsibility, with let me say, white paper to generate this new proposition, this new operating model. And for sure, right now we are already embedded this within the entire retail business, cooperating with other let me say, function and another segment. But the first years are key to be a separate team dedicated to this, to speed up and to test and learn based on the market, because it's a complete new game, you know.
And I think that is very important, that what you've said is that, you know, it's like a company in a company, right? If you have having your own P&L means you put your money where your mouth is, right? Rather than, oh, let's have another AI lab. I mean, you know, if you apply AI, you know, it better goes on the P rather than the L, right? Because you have that responsibility. But I think it's that independence of the functions within the mothership, and not because people do not want to help, it's just for them, in a rational manner, it'll always be better to tweak the existing model. You know, I imagine, despite all the success on the D2C model, if we just tweak your existing motor business by 1%, it would dwarf the new business, because it's very different optimizing existing large business than building up a new business. And so I think that is very, the word I usually use is, it's almost like a captive MGA. You know, you need to be independent. You need to do your own thing.
Actually, Zurich Klinc is an NGA.
Okay, well, there you go. Right. No, because it creates that. And as you then said, if that MGA finds other channels as partners because they've created a product, great. You know, why wouldn't you? But I think you need that autonomy, and with that also accountability and responsibility to kind of make this work, because otherwise, I've seen, and also within your group, innovation departments fail exactly for that reason. They were so dependent on someone else reprioritizing their roadmap, and innovation is not it's a means to an end, right? It's not a value in itself, just because something is
got it. Actually, we don't have any chief innovation officer, you know, neither a department dedicated just to innovation. Innovation should be part of the business, should be an arm to generate your objective, you know. And this is the way how we have always tackled this, not in the other way around. So we have to introduce a technology because it's a new innovation. No, we use the technology to the technology innovation to achieve our objective, our business objective and customer objectives.
I would like to ask an additional question, because you just said it's a totally new game, and you talk about, let's say, telco operators, etc. Do you also see them as your biggest competitors in future? Because I mean, they're so much nearer to, like, let's say, if you see in fintech, this whole development of Apple Pay. I mean, if you own the device, the question is, do they own the customer? And if this could happen, how do you anticipate?
Well, I have a very clear answer to this. So I know the fintech solution is a bit different from insurtech, in my opinion. So I don't see our distributor or our partners competitors, because we know that they have the access to the customer, but they are not capable, let me say, or sometimes this need a lot of time to generate a proper insurance solution. And I'm working with Orange and working with Google, this new health proposition I'm doing in let me say, in collaboration with Google. And I'm working with banks. For example, we Open Bank in Spain, that is a digital bank of Santander, and I'm working with many players in the different industry. And most of them they have the customers. They have the customer, not us. But they don't want to generate the insurance solution or the insurance product. They want to be partner with the most, let me say, attractive insurance solution to offer to their customers. So I see them not a competitor, but really like a partner to that they have the customer, but we could be the insurance solution for their customer. And this is, for me, the way how we are approaching all the market.
And Tom, you had this, I don't know whether it's still a trend. You have kind of this trend of self-insuring in commercial insurance as well. And if my notes are correct, I believe Zurich, as a big commercial carrier, was then also quite adaptive, and I think at the forefront of building captive solutions for carriers. So if maybe someone wants to take the balance sheet But an insurance company is something else than a balance sheet. Otherwise, we would have reinsurers going directly to the customer. They do not, and we know perfectly well. But I always find that most insurers, if they're really honest, very rarely had the end customer touch point. They were usually going through some form of intermediary in the first place. So nothing has really changed. But sure. And I think Apple Pay is a good one. I mean, they still needed Goldman to shoulder the losses.
Yeah, but if you just see, if you just take Apple Pay as an example, if you see in what speed and how massive their market entry is, and how aggressive, I mean, yeah, they still need Goldman, but let's say all those other banks are becoming in a pretty difficult situation now, and the same could happen with Google Pay. So the question always is, all those developments start much earlier in fintech, and then they swap. Let's say years later, they swap into the insurtech scene, to my point of view. But it's, I mean, it's a good answer Stefano gave about partnerships. So I think at this time, what can you do? You can only move forward and finding the right partnerships and see that everybody still earns the money, and you focus on the stuff you do better than the other ones.
Yes, this is the point. So we have to do our proposition differential to the competitors, because at the end, the customer is within telcos, within big techs and banks and so on. We should have the best proposition to fit with their customer needs. Our competitor are the other insurance company. We have to have the best proposition that should have the best technology to be embedded, the best personalization of the product, and what we have discussed before, the flexibility. If we go with the same product, annual renewable, with the same term and condition for everybody, let me say, you are not trying to provide the best solution for the customer, and therefore you are out of the game, in my opinion.
Yeah. And I think a lot of, I mean, there is, if you're a distributor, I mean, there's a long way to go from earning a commission and then really wanting to squeeze out the last part of the lemon on the combined ratio. And, there's, but again, I think the main point here is to rather be actively influencing and having a good option and being a better solution, which than the other insurers, but also then potentially an insourcing option. And I feel that is a key thing. A lot of even large insurance companies who are not at the forefront of embedded, they kind of go, yeah, I'll wait until I get a really nice offer from Amazon. It's not how it's going to work. You cannot just start with these. You shouldn't even start with Orange as your first telco partner. You have no idea how to price it. You don't even know you don't know how to make the program work, because it's not just paying the highest commission. You need to have some infrastructure and experience in place. And it might very well be that the Orange program in 5 years' time requires different things than it did today. Very likely, quite frankly. And so I think being at the forefront is really key. I guess one question to kind of switch a little bit more into how international insurers set up their digital platforms across product lines and across countries. A personal observation is that you rarely see truly international platforms, other than, let's say, travel insurance, sometimes device protection, sometimes, let's say, credit protection, financial lines. But for most of and certainly for life and health, but even for most traditional P&C products, you seem to have national processes and operations and tech stacks. Is that inaccurate? And I believe that some players, I think Allianz tried it, AXA tried it. I don't know whether Zurich also ventured into that. They usually fail due to the complexity of managing the different local and international requirements. Is that a fair assessment of the situation? Or do you see some examples where this has worked, let's say in motor or in home insurance or something?
Okay, so first of all, it depends a lot on the business model. Okay, so from a line of business perspective, you are right. In my opinion, the regulator of each one of country generate complexity to have a single proposition in motor, in household, for example, in SME that could be leveraged directly without any change in any one of the European country, for example, even more in other regions. Okay, but for me, insurance is changing a bit, and when we speak about platform, there are components that should be and could be very common between all the industry. So when we speak about data modeling, for example, when we speak about CRM, when we speak about the customer interaction model, all of this for sure could be leveraged for all the line of business. When we speak about that, so probably you are referring to the main frame, no? So to the core backend, and where the
Policy
logic,
and claim, really.
yeah,
An account, let's say, okay, accounting, but but policy and claim is really
claiming
the
policy and claim that are very regulated. So probably for motor, household, and all these other products that are a bit more complex and also much more regulated is still, let me say, a challenging to have a European or common platform to be used, to be honest. For other line of business, as you say, for sure, the scalability around regions is much simpler. Travel and others like this. Absolutely, yes.
but it sounds, and in a way I feel there is a reasonable model. If you see international MGAs, that's exactly what they do, right? They go across certain platforms. They sometimes have, there's different carriers, sometimes per country, sometimes per product line, and they do something quite similar. They do their own data modeling or product design, CRM, customer interaction. Sometimes they do, on the simpler products, they do exactly what we've said, policy admin, claims. I think some even try to go motor insurance recently, but that's tough.
Yeah.
And not every country is the same. I hear Germany is a nightmare, Switzerland is a nightmare. Some other countries might be a little bit more forgiving. But yeah, so it's a product
But
complexity.
as you said, so from my side, an NGA could spread the proposition or part of it around different countries on this, so to have this single solution that could be replicated in all the countries. But when we speak then about the proper product, they leverage each country carrier to use it based on the regulation of each one of the countries. So I don't see right now any good example of a motor business that could be, let me say, seamless in each one of the countries. I don't see it.
And I mean,
could
sorry,
be
go
Tesla.
ahead.
I also think that there the innovation comes from companies like Tesla, for instance.
But what for sure Tesla could have an advantage. The problem is that the regulation in Switzerland, for example, in Italy and Spain is completely different, and
Yeah, I
Tesla
understand.
should be linked to this. So, for example, in Switzerland, you could have a single plate number this for different cars.
Yeah, I
While
know,
in
but
Spain, this does not work at all.
I know, but it's exactly what we, let's say, what in the whole sector was discussed about fintech solutions. It was exactly the same. You also had a discussion about regulation, and then you also had a development of, let's say, European regulation, where Google, etc., got their licenses from Estland or whatsoever, or Letland, I don't know, somewhere. So let's say if
Lithuania.
you Lithuania or something like that, but let's say it's at a certain point something is true, and then stuff just suddenly changes. So it also could be that, let's say, the model of Tesla would become much more into a kind of leasing kind of contract and not selling the cars, as the company also is moving much more into electricity and about batteries and not about cars perhaps in 5 or 10 years. So I think that if you have something, a kind of new innovation going on, where you could integrate, as an example, the insurance, which you could do in your device, as Apple could do, or if you could integrate in your car, I still think that Tesla is able to solve the plate issue in Switzerland. But you can also just leave out Switzerland for a very long time. Like, let's say in the supermarket business, Aldi and Lidl didn't touch upon Switzerland for decades.
Yeah. To be honest, in the future, some of this barrier will be, let me say, reduced. Absolutely. The point is that we are speaking about line of business that are very, very complex and very, very regulated. I tell you, for example, in Spain, the UBI concept is not so strong like in UK, for example, in US. And it's something that was tested here from several companies, probably all of them. And the fact that it does not work is essentially because the culture of the customer is quite different. So they don't want to be tracked, they don't see benefit for this. And also because the regulator, again, does not allow to remove completely the TPL, while in other countries this is possible. You can remove TPL from a car that is parked without being used. In Spain, for example, it's not possible at all. In Italy, neither. There is a minimum TPL that you have to keep. So it's just example. In my opinion, we will reduce this barrier. And there are every day more line of business that could be global. It could be using a same platform for all of them, like what we are doing with extended warranty or with device or with travel. But the regulation in the main line of business right now are still blocking some of them.
And I think, Tom, one of the key things is it needs to be distribution-led. It cannot be proposition-led. You don't just build this platform for 5 countries and then go for a distribution partner. Sure, if Tesla is willing to do that with you, and there is some form of business case down the line, and down the line could be, if we get Tesla, we can get the others, and then we can do all of this international business. But there is doing payments internationally has more use cases for distribution. They're more I'm not saying it's easier because I don't understand it, right? But I think there's more use cases for international and transnational e-commerce than there is for exactly the same product, where you say, I need to have exactly the same process for a German car than a Swiss car. It's just less with all the other stuff going on. Gentlemen, conscious of time, we do have a hard stop. Stefano, it was truly a pleasure. Thank you so much for taking the time. Thank you so much for being so charmingly open and telling us how you see it. And hope to see you personally at some point, and wish you all the best with all of your endeavors.
Thanks to you, to Tom, for this 1 hour. It was very fast. So this means that we have a fantastic discussion, and happy to meet in person to have further discussion like this.
Awesome.
Yeah, whenever you are in Zurich.
Okay, absolutely. I will not fly too much right now, but in the past I was flying quite every other week. So one day we will meet again there for sure. I'm sure about that.
Thank you for your time and the interesting conversation.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. Take care.
Have a good day. Ciao.
Bye-bye.
Bye.